And I think they even like mentioned OnlyFans. OnlyFans isn't good for young women. I mean, it had, people who are involved in it try to paint it as good for women, but
Apparently, I most of the gals on OnlyFans only make like 150 bucks a month off of it, something like that. So
you're selling
the,
yourself for pennies at that
yeah,
point.
for
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis,
I'm Michael.
and we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. Michael, why are we here?
Today we are doing episode 10 of the Exodus series. We've been doing this for a while, just kind of slowly plugging away at it. But this is Jordan Peterson's Exodus forums, where he has several specialists come sit around a table and read through Exodus and talk it over.
Turns out that a book is more durable than stone. It's more durable than a castle. It's more durable than an empire.
Thought they were doing good. The communists thought they were doing good. Everybody thinks they're doing good. I don't know anybody who wakes up and thinks I want to do evil.
Freedom begins in the heart, and God will never invade our hearts. And that's where the Christian faith and Judaism overlap. And I think Jesus is saying, where it goes wrong, it starts inside. It starts in the heart.
Churchill said, wherever there are three Jews, there are two prime ministers and one leader of the opposition.
Oh, that's very funny. I never heard that
one. It's a great thing to do jumping off points with us. We're not going through them linearly. We're not just saying, oh, this is what happens, this is what happens. It's more of a discussion of a previous discussion. So I would strongly suggest, if you haven't already watched them, go check out Jordan Peterson's Exodus seminars. And some of them are in the Daily Wire. Some of them are on YouTube. They should be fairly easy to find. I guess the first place to go, they start going through the 10 Commandments, right? And so
our last one was like the first 5 of the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
And then this is where they kind of go over the second 5 of the 10 Commandments. Mostly to keep in mind, the 10 Commandments can generally be kind of broken down into 2 laws, which is love God with all thy might, mind, heart, and strength. And then love God, or love your fellow man as yourself.
Yeah.
And this being pointed out by Jesus when he's asked, what is the greatest of the laws? And there's generally it being 5 that are about laws that are about loving
reserved.
God.
Yeah, reserved
serving
for God.
And then 5 that are kind of reserved for loving your neighbor, because if you love your neighbor, you won't murder him.
Yeah.
So thou shalt not kill.
That's the first one. That's the first one that they kind of get into.
Let's get into that, because and this I've known for a long time.
Yeah, because Dennis Prager talks about this a lot. It's not in the Hebrew. It's not kill. Thou shalt not kill. It's thou shalt not murder. And there is a difference and a distinction between killing and murdering. And that is, I think that is a good jumping off point for us to discuss. Now, you've talked about this before, and you actually presented this to me because I didn't know this. So the whole idea is that murder is actually a victim killing, where you victimize somebody in the killing process. Mm-hmm. Whereas a killing in defense of your livelihood, of your life.
Yeah, you can do it in defense. And Prager kind of states it's like unlawful killing. So I guess that would, constitute in defense, but also killing animals to eat, and killing within wars, those kinds of things. And Prager tries to say that it's killing in just wars. It's hard to just demonize and condemn people that are in their country, and some of which are just going to be drafted and not even have a choice and they go out and kill in the name of their country. So it's it is a little
there's
bit,
a gray area in there, I
yeah,
believe, because it's not, because this is more along the lines of the individual than society as a whole. So it's basically saying you as an individual shouldn't murder, and because if this law doesn't exist, what's to keep people from just going after everybody at any point? It sows chaos. And they actually cover this in the seminar. They talk about how these laws, these coming up laws, it's like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. Those are basically to just keep
society.
humans in society in check, because
Right.
if you don't have those laws, I mean, that's any society, not
We
just
need to live together. Yeah. So
we
we
need
need
to
to live
live.
together. We need to live well together. So like respect property,
Yeah,
respect each other sexually, like
yeah.
just like how do you build a society? Here's some things,
Hmm.
like keep that in
Keep that in
mind.
mind. Yeah,
But it's also just and it can all kind of be broken down into, love thy neighbor as thyself. Because like
yeah,
if you love your neighbor, you're not going to covet his wife. You're not going to
yeah,
covet his house. You're not going to kill him
yeah.
or murder him.
One of the things about killing justly, like this would incentivize this commandment incentivizes pacifists and vegans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vegans often use the, like, I don't want anything killed to nourish myself.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Peterson posits this idea. This is just a brilliant idea. It's like, well, that might be what praying over your food is that you've actually
You're
killed this
atoning.
animal.
Maybe you're atoning for the death of this animal.
For the death of this animal to nourish me. And that is, I've never thought of it that way. That is so brilliant of a thought, because maybe that makes sense to me. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I've had this animal killed for me to nourish my body. I'm going to thank God for that. And by doing that, that maybe in a sense absolves you of the killing of this animal. Not only that, but you're not killing the animal out of malice or greed or psychopathy. You're killing this animal to nourish your body.
Yeah.
And that I think is an honorable way to say. And the Indians used to do this with the buffalo on the plains. They used to, after getting a buffalo, they would open it up and then they would thank the Great Spirit for this bountiful animal that is going to feed their family. Like a buffalo would feed one family for months,
Yeah.
And so there's that. I thought that was extremely interesting. Do you have anything to say about that?
I've seen Last of the Mohicans, so I'm all game for that. The very beginning of the Last of the Mohicans, they're chasing down an elk.
Yeah.
And when they kill it,
they thank.
They
say a prayer
give thanks
for
it.
They say a prayer over it.
They pray for it. So
that's a great that's a great scene
it.
too.
It's great. It's a great scene. They're all running through the forest and stuff. That's cool.
It's beautifully shot. They get into
I would agree with that.
When they talk about envy, though, this is very interesting. And Dennis has so much knowledge in this. He's like the MVP of this seminar. It was very interesting because they're talking about envy versus aspiration, like aspiring to be.
If you covet your neighbor's wife, that's different than I would like a wife that's kind of like my neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
Or like I would like a house that's kind of like my neighbor's house. When you covet, you're like, you're wanting your neighbor's house.
He's trying to distinguish between coveting and aspiration. So what he's doing is he's distinguishing the two. So there's coveting, whereas you are actually saying, I want his wife, or I want his house. I want his, like, the actual things. Whereas aspiration, when you aspire, I want to be successful enough as this guy to get a house like that, or a wife like that, or a Lamborghini like that. So that's the difference. And this is so interesting to me. So like, for example, I've always really liked Christopher Nolan's career. He's made some amazing movies, and that is always, I'm always in admiration towards his movies. And if I had my druthers or whatever, I would aspire to make movies that are similar, that are as complex, and have as much success as him, and as most filmmakers would want to have. And that's what's interesting. But I don't want his career. His career is amazing. I love his movies. So that's
Well, and I
the
think
difference.
That's where all these fairly well kind of interplay with each other. Because like, if you covet your neighbor's wife, then you're probably gonna, that may lead to committing adultery.
Yeah,
right.
An action. It needs to be an actionable offense.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like, don't do these things. And as we learn from the story of David, this kind of one leads to the other, almost like he covets his neighbor's wife, because he sees her off the balcony
with Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, right? Like, covets her, and then he kind of takes her, and then he kills her husband, right?
Her
like
husband.
he premeditates a murder and kills her husband. So like, it all kind of, you can kind of see how it all kind of connects
together. These four leading up to the last.
You want to know what's interesting? I just thought of this, but did a poll of, would you push a button that someone randomly in the world would die, but you would get like $10,000 or something like that? Would you push the button? And it was something overwhelmingly like a huge percentage of actually said they would push the button. What? Really? Like a person's life somewhere in the world? Now, a lot of people are thinking, they're just like, well, that betters my life. And it's just some random person
that I don't
anywhere
know
in the world. That's, 8 billion people. Who cares? One less person. But I'm just like, what?
Those questions seem to be, because it feeds off of the first response, somebody just responding really quickly, right? But if people really think about it, and you did have a button sitting there, you would have to rationalize how to do it. Because if it's some random person, who's to say it's not some random person in your life?
Well, that would be kind of be the joke of the devil, right? Yeah, that would kind of be the thing, right? That if you were to make a short film or something along those lines, that would probably be kind of the I think the karma that you would want.
I think there is a movie made about that conundrum,
kind of that concept. But I think it just goes to show like how selfish people can be. Right. Like, now the thing is, and if it's completely separate, a lot of people probably would go for it. But if you saw a picture of the guy, if you saw a picture of them with their family, that would change the outcome. Right. So that would probably change how many people would say yes to pushing the button, because how many wouldn't.
I think as people, as humans, if it's out of sight and out of mind, you are highly more likely to have less guilt over it, probably, I guess is the best way to put it.
So it's just a hypothetical, that's how many people, that's 833,000 people that voted they would randomly have someone killed to get $10,000. Could you imagine if it was 1 million?
Yeah, if it's
$1 million, do it again. If it was 1 million,
he should do it again and go for 1 million.
Because that's like 10,000 pays the bills for a little bit. but a million would change your life.
Yeah.
Interesting. And we are talking about the 10 commandments where it said, thou shalt not murder.
Thou shalt not
and
murder.
Thou shalt not covet.
And that's both of those things.
That's both those things right there.
Wow.
Interesting.
Way interesting.
Isn't that just, it's like, you know, the theory behind a zombie apocalypse film is that what do humans do when the rule of law just falls apart? You know, when everything just falls apart,
and it becomes like a survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know, would you kill somebody over a can of beans? Well, you don't know because you haven't been in where you're hungry,
starving, or where your child is starving.
Yeah, it's like, so these are all,
but these are laws that prevent society from delving into that, and that's what all of our laws are based on. And that's what we need to keep in mind when we talk about the 10 commandments, because, you know, a secular person who's never done any, you know, anything into religion and never delved into religion, they're going to go, well, we follow laws, but they're not going to think about, well, those laws, what are those laws based on? And it's like the last time that we spoke about this subject, Dennis Prager put out the idea that, you know, science tells you to be survival of the fittest. It doesn't tell you to be good to your neighbor. Religion tells you to be good to your neighbor.
That's where you get religion. Yeah, for sure.
So they get, do you want to get into, so Peterson talks about lust, rage, and envy being gods themselves because they possess you. They get into demonic possession a little bit, but the whole point that Peterson's trying to put across is that they're not, a demon doesn't come right into a person's body and possess them. They're possessed by the spirit of greed, envy, and lust, you know. So and this makes people do crazy things, like just really out of the box. They're not normally going to do this or something like that.
They're trying to find the difference between, there's some people out, like Prager is, he's like, no, there's no devil on your shoulder that kind of tells you or makes you do things that you didn't want to do. That's, and Jordan Peterson is kind of talking about how this is, it's an animus, it's a bad thing that starts to control you, or it's within you, right? It's not from some demon that's without. But a lot of Christians have kind of bought into this idea that a demon from like outside, outside can kind of come into you and make you do things. When
in fact, it's probably all within you, and it's up to you to fight against. Like he points this out. He says, like, Cain invited the spirit of nihilism and envy into his soul. He asked for it to come into his soul, and he fed it, and that's what made him. That's what brought him to kill his brother. And that's kind of the idea of the possession of the spirit of evil essentially comes from. It's in all of us, and we have to do something in our lives to keep us from succumbing to that, right? Everybody has to do that. That's why we have laws. That's why we have, you know, it's to deter you from making these horrible decisions that will not only ruin your life, but might ruin people around you's life. Or I'm sure Abel probably had a family, and Cain kills him, and then he's cursed for all time. And not only that, but the family is left without a father or whatever. You know, they don't go into those details, but you got to think of those details when you're following these commandments, right?
I find it interesting. I've watched other videos criticizing Prager about this pornography, his pornography views.
His stance. Tell his stance on pornography.
I mean, he kind of said he's like, listen, guys, I'm not condoning pornography, but I'm also saying that like there's some situations that he has callers that call in that have run into like, and he uses an example of a man taking care of his wife with Alzheimer's. And this is a situation where it might be better for him and the family for him to be able to release his sexual tension with, and he's like, a magazine ages me, but like something online where he can kind of release that sexual tension because he's not going to get it from his wife.
Or is it more honorable for him to divorce his wife
and then go find another wife? It's like,
that's not right either.
He's like,
right?
I'm arguing that it's better that he just look at some pornography and relieve himself, right? Like he's just kind of being honest about the kind of the truth of the world. And it's interesting to me because I've listened to some guys on the red pill manosphere who say if we had a button to get rid of all pornography, I'd do it. And I think that actually on a societal level might be a good thing. Like if there was a button that got rid of all of pornography and it was just gone,
it was gone. Yeah.
That could, and Jordan gets into this, and I kind of love this idea. And it goes back to he did a kind of a debate with Sam Harris. It was kind of more of a discussion, but they kind of did a debate where
years ago,
Sam Harris says, the Catholic religion says we should be teaching these young boys they're going to go to hell if they are masturbating. And
then Jordan Peterson says his take on it is, well, what is it keeping you from doing?
And that's what he said. Well, what is the masturbating keeping you from doing? So the
point is that too much of it is going to ruin you. Like you rely on it too much. He's also talks in this seminar. He's also saying, well, by having sexual stuff readily available and within reach keeps you from actually having relationships with real people. And so let me
read the quote. Can I read? Okay. I wrote it down.
Go ahead.
So he says, well, he's talking about the incel phenomena. And we've talked at length about the incel phenomena.
Yes.
And pornography it's a lot of different things,
but it plays into it pretty heavily.
Pornography plays a huge part into this. And the incel phenomena, one of which, and Chris Williamson talks about this a ton, which is they're basically all the things that in ancient times in evolution that would have made us go out and kill the beast and bring home the food and get the girl are all being kind of hijacked by online video games and pornography. So video games allow you to link up with your buddies and go do a mission, hunt a thing.
Yeah, that's not real.
That's not real, but it
fires all
your mind think.
Yeah.
You're out there going and hunting the thing, and pornography allows your access, tricking your brain into thinking that you're procreating. Yeah. So that's where they kind of start off. But he says pornography provides an easy way out. How desperate do you need to be to find a woman and stay with her? And the answer might be, it's so damn unlikely and difficult that you need every single thing inside you striving towards that end. And if you take the easy way out on any front, you're compromising that.
Yeah.
I love it. I thought that was really okay. So one of the issues here is just that this gives you an out. And so you never go and talk to women out in the real world.
And so you never go. Yeah. So, but I mean, the rest of the panel is trying to moralize it, right? So when you give in to those lustful desires, then you're destroying some kind of connection with God in a moral sense. You're sinning against God, and Jordan Peter. So everybody at this panel has a different view on this, which is so interesting. Like Pajot thinks you shouldn't be doing it at all. Prager thinks that Dennis Prager thinks that in certain circumstances it would be good because of the sexual tension, like he said, with somebody. He even says, like, are you in a sexless marriage? Are you taking care of somebody who cannot perform sex with you? He's like, in that case, why wouldn't this be a good thing rather than destroying the connection and leaving the marriage? And then Jordan Peterson's trying to say that what does it keep you from doing?
What's it keeping you from doing?
Because we know that these things can become addictions. I've told this story before. I lived in a dorm room with a guy who never left his dorm room. He couldn't study. He couldn't get through anything because he had access to pornography all day long. He had,
and that's all
DVDs,
he did.
He had stuff from online. He had it from everywhere. He tried selling me some of it. It was bizarre. And in fact, there was a fire in our dorm room, and he was the only one there. That proves that he was the only one. So it was keeping him from doing anything with his life.
Yeah,
because that's how much it controlled him. So I mean, you can see everybody's perspective on it, right? Everybody's got a take on it. I don't know if they really didn't solve.
Yeah, they didn't really quite solve it, but and Prager's come through a lot of fire because he's conservative. He has a huge Christian audience.
Yes.
And it seems like the Christians kind of hampered on him a lot on this. And I watched some videos of some Christian commentators that really delved deep, and they went, I mean, they're coming from like the scriptures and things like that. They're coming from it from a faith-based kind of scenario. But I think there's an argument against it without just the scriptures and the faith-based. I think societally, you want good things in your society, and we don't know that necessarily these things are good. One thing that it makes me wonder if I've heard from some guys that if there was a button that got rid of pornography, they'd push it and make it go away forever. It makes you wonder though if some of these guys in their basements playing video games and watching porn, that might not bring them out of the woodworks to create crime.
To be criminal.
That just, it might motivate them to become criminal. I think there's a lot to Chris Williamson's theory of his sedation theory, which is if there's a lot of young men out there, most societies who have a lot of young men who don't have access to women, they'll
become violent. It'll become
violent, and they become criminal. And we haven't seen that, but maybe it's because of online. You got porn, and you've got online stuff, and you've got video games, and it all kind of sedates these guys into not being out there. And it goes criminals.
Well, it goes back to Jordan Peterson's thought: is what is it keeping you from? What is so? Yeah. I think if you lay this down as like maybe in the short term it's not bad, but if it controls you, it would be bad.
Yeah, well, and we might be seeing a time where
where control
where it's
men are being
controlling
controlled.
too many young men, and that's not good for our society. I think, and we've talked about this before, I think when the sex robots come, it's going to get even worse.
Yeah.
And
we
may see
Jordan
a
Peterson has
point
talked
where 50%
about
of men drop out of the dating market.
Yeah. And Jordan Peterson has talked about this a lot in length about how it de-incentivizes them to go impress women. They don't want to get out of the house, and so he's actually talked about this pretty good length. I don't know if I disagree with Prager's take on it, because anything in excess is going to be bad, I think. And so, but I don't think there's a lot of people out there who know how to limit their excesses, right? They can't get beyond their, that's where alcoholism comes in. That's where
Prager mentions alcohol. He's like, and that's, I mean, maybe that's a great case in point. It's just like, if it's not an excess, it might not be a problem. And Jordan says this, he says, if there is too much justice, then no one can survive. But if there's too much mercy, no one can survive either. Right. So it's kind of that, maybe
drawing the line in between.
Yeah.
And the problem, the reason that there are laws on the books about a lot of these things is to keep people's from giving into their excesses. So all the stuff that happened in Oregon decriminalizes all drugs, and now they can't function as a state, and they're trying to recriminalize some of the drugs again. And so this kind of just blew up in their faces, because if you don't put limits on anything, then there's always going to be the somewhat uneducated and undisciplined persons who are going to completely take advantage of all of that.
Yeah.
Right? Joe Rogan's always talking about discipline. And one of the reasons that undisciplined people are not successful is because they give into their excesses way too much.
Yeah.
And anything can draw them away from their goals. Oh, look over there. There's some alcohol over there. Oh, there's a woman on the screen over there. It keeps them from doing what, like, I think Jordan Peterson's got it a better philosophy about it. It's like, what is he keeping you from doing?
Yeah.
I think that's where we'd have to kind of let it lie, And the truth is, they were talking, what got them into this was adultery, right? Adultery ruins lives. So
and they kind of led it. Somebody quoted Jesus, because Jesus is the one that kind of made the adultery thing, like, rather than it just being a sin to commit adultery, like, it's also a sin that you
to commit it in your head,
to commit it in your heart.
Yeah.
If you desire to, have sex with this person. And so
I
the
think
Christians are using that for the pornography thing.
Yes.
And that kind of backs up being against pornography. I mean, and let's be honest, with alcohol and pornography, obviously those things ruin more lives than they help.
Yeah, exactly.
And clear.
And Prager isn't like this evangelist for pornography. He's like, I realize that is a horrible thing. That it isn't doing much good in the world. But I mean, he's also an older man, but he also is honest about the sex drive of men. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to think that if you took away all
even
pornography,
these guys all talking about, they don't
really have a solution. They don't solve it. And these guys are way smarter than us. And so it is extremely interesting conversation, because everybody's kind of on a different place with that. And it's interesting because all of them have a good point. All of them do. I think, but it goes back to excesses, right? How
Yeah.
much excesses can we indulge in?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So,
and they even like mentioned OnlyFans. OnlyFans isn't good for young women. I mean, it had,
yeah.
they try to paint it, the OnlyFans, people who are involved in it try to paint it as good for women, but it's not
Well,
good.
most of the apparently most of the gals on OnlyFans only make like $150 a month off of it, something like that.
You're
So
selling yourself for pennies at that
yeah,
point.
for $150 a month kind of thing. They talked about that for a while. Thou shalt not steal is one of the things that helps a society function, because if you can't own property, then you aren't going to take care of anything.
Yes.
And we want a society where people take care of their own responsibilities and things.
Yeah, and they get into communism on this because the communists in Russia during the Soviet Union, nothing was you would think that they had like a utopia, but nothing was taken care of. Nobody cared about anything, and everybody
because no one owned anything.
Because no one owned anything.
Yeah,
and nobody
not my responsibility.
And everybody was. It's basically an entire nation of people that were passing the buck. And you see this at your work, right? You see this. There's always the guy who's getting everything done. There's the guy who's sitting around doing nothing. And then there's the guy who thinks that he's in charge, telling everybody what to do. And there's a problem there with humans, where humans, and if you give none of these guys an incentive, then nothing is going to happen. There's always, they're just going to shirk their responsibility. They're not going to. So there's always, you'll have the workers, but they're going to always be the workers, whether they have property or not. They're always going to be the people who want to do stuff or get stuff done.
Well, and if you incentivize that their property would go to somebody who doesn't work, then they would eventually stop working.
Then they eventually stop
right?
working, which is exactly what happened in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
They just stopped production.
Their point of this law of property, of not stealing, is it's crucial to societies to be able to function. And they talked about trust not being any trust. If there's no trust in the system, and
everybody's lying to each other,
then nothing, no business gets done, nothing, because you can't trust anybody. They'll just steal from you.
They talk about in the Soviet Union that it was a distrustful society that was always just doing things to show other people, and it created all this dysfunction. And so nothing was done, nothing was produced, because they'll have like one city that they'll show dignitaries who show up, and that one, and it looks nice and it's clean and all that kind of stuff, but everywhere around it is done. It's shambles. It's it's slave labor. It's so if you don't have property, you take away incentive for people to take care of anything. A farmer isn't going to take care of a farm that he doesn't own, or he can't reap the benefits of.
Profit his own, be able to profit himself and his family, right? His responsibility, his area of responsibility.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on that, brother?
Nope. I think that's good.
Check us out on social media, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening to this and not watching it, please go and like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. That helps us with our algorithms. And in the meantime, keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. We'll see you, brother.
See ya.